Summer Resources and Activities for Students with Disabilities, ESY versus Other Activities, with Nancy Goosen, OSDE Special Education Policy and Procedures Program Manager, Norma Law, DDSD Vocational Transition and Education Program Manager, Miranda Hutchinson, OSDE Innovation and Training Program Administrator, and Renee Briscoe, DRS Transition Coordinator. February 18th, 2026, Cirque's Wisdom Wednesday webinar series.
Hi, and welcome to this month's Wisdom Wednesday webinar hosted by the Special Education Resolution Center. I'm Alyssa Hollaby, the Program Manager at Cirque, and I will be introducing our guest presenters today and facilitating the discussion through monitoring the chat and Q&A for any questions or comments. Today, our webinar is Summer Resources and Activities for Students with Disabilities, and we have Nancy Goosen, the Program Manager for Special Education Policy and Procedures with the OSDE. We have Norma Law, the Vocational Transition and Education Program Manager with DDSD, as well as Miranda Hutchinson, the Program Administrator for Innovation and Training with DDSD. And we also have Renee Briscoe, the Transition Coordinator with DRS, sharing information with us about their respective topics. Nancy, you can go ahead and share your screen to get started. I will monitor the Q&A in the chat, and we will save all questions for the end of each presentation.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about really kind of the policies and procedures surrounding special education. And so when we look at extended school year services, especially in the world of special education, we like to utilize our acronyms. So oftentimes you'll hear the school district talk about ESY, and this is what they're talking about, is that extended school year services for children with disabilities. And so I always like to first go to the law and look at what does IDA federal regulations say about extended school year services. And so this is where you can find everything you want to know about IDA, which is the Individuals with Disability Education Act. And it's in Title 34, Code of Federal Regulations, and it's in Section 300.106. A, 1, and 2, we're going to talk about first. And it's interesting to me that those that write federal laws and federal regulation like to repeat certain things that they feel like needs to be emphasized. And so you'll see in the federal regulation, it talks about the public agency. When you see that word public agency in the federal law, that really just means the local school district. And so when it says each public agency means each school district must ensure that extended school year services are available as necessary to provide FAPE. And we're going to talk about FAPE here in a minute, but it's interesting that it goes right into the next, the next sentence goes into extended school year services must be provided only if a child's IEP team determines on an individual basis, which is in accordance to all the sections in the law that talks about developing the IEP, which is 300.320 through 300.324, that the services are necessary for the provision of FAPE to the child. So what does FAPE mean? What are they talking about? Why would they emphasize that so much, that ESY is really available for children with disability as necessary for the provision of FAPE? So let's look at that. So in the law, again, that's Title 34, Section 300.17, FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. And again, we talk about things in acronyms, so you'll hear districts call it FAPE. And that means special education related services that are provided to the child at public expense, meaning the school district is going to provide all that expense, and there should be at no cost to the parent. And it's got to meet our standards here at the state agency. So we have policies and procedures that surround everything that involves providing FAPE to a child. And that also includes any child ages 3 through the school year in which they turn 22 if needed, because that's the maximum age. IDA services cease upon receiving that standard diploma. So that includes our preschool buildings, our elementary, and our secondary, which is middle school and high school. education programs. And lastly, FAPE is provided in conformity with the Individualized Education Program, and that is the acronym of IEP. A lot of people want to say Individualized Education Plan. It's not a plan, it's truly a program. It's a federal program that meets a variety of different needs. And so when they say that FAPE must be in conformity with the IEP, that means it's very, very much individualized. And so therefore, not all children are going to receive the same services. For example, a child who's deaf would need an educational interpreter to provide that mode of communication. There are children that might need direct instruction for math, but not reading. So everything's based on, one, we have assessment data that drive those educational needs. And from those educational needs drive our goals and objectives. And from that drives what type of services. So all that is what they mean by FAPE. So really, how do the IEP teams determine that ESY, again, that's extended school year services, is necessary for the provision of FAPE? So I'm kind of a history buff, so I apologize for going back in time with you. But there is a Johnson's case that kind of is historically set around the extended school year services, especially for Oklahoma, because our state is in alignment with the 10th Circuit. And this case came about in 1990. There were other cases in different circuits, but it really didn't apply to us until something goes to the Supreme Court, then it applies to all states. But we do try to look at these other circuits as guidance, but we are not in alignment. And I'm going to explain that here in a second. But this court case was about a little girl. Her first name was Natalie. And Natalie's parents, Natalie had a significant cognitive disability. And her parents from 1982 to 1986, those summer months when she was preschool age, they decided to use that summertime to put her in recreational camps. And it wasn't until the summer, just the school year of 86, 87, that the parents go, you know what, she's at an age now that we're worried about her academic progress. We were wanting to make sure she was involved in a lot of fine motor and gross motor activities through these recreational camps, but now we're concerned about her academic progress. And we feel like she needs extended school year services. Well, this district said no, because she did not go to our summer ESY programs from 82 through 86, and therefore we have no data to show she had any regression from her preschool program to her kindergarten program, and now going into first grade. We don't anticipate from the actual data that we've collected, we don't see any need for ESY. Well, the parent decided to file a due process. And in the due process, the school district won on the fact that there was no actual data to substantiate what was considered the main focus of determining ESY was really about did the child regress so significantly, basically that backsliding of academic critical skills, that when they came back in August, that they were not able to recoup those skills in an appropriate time frame. Please know that all children, even children without disabilities, regress over the summer. They forget things. So a lot of teachers, the first couple of weeks of school, will review a lot of the information that they learned last school year, just to kind of get them caught back up on, oh yeah, now I remember. It's kind of like we as adults, if we've gone on a vacation, we come back and I'm like, what is my password? So it's that concept of I've forgotten. How can I recoup that skill and bring that back into my forefront of my memory, and utilizing that skill to make growth with other skills? So that's what we mean by recoupment and analysis of that. And so the hearing officer based it upon the Raleigh case that was back in 1982, that the IEP had to be developed through the IEP process that was reasonably calculated to enable the child to receive an educational benefit. And because there was no evidence of that regression recoupment aspect, the due process hearing officer ruled in favor of the school district. So the parent appealed to the Western Federal Court, And again, the Western Federal District Court upheld the school district's finding of regression recoupment analysis. So the parents again appealed to the 10th Circuit. And at the 10th Circuit, the court decided to adopt the Fifth Circuit's analysis, which was an Alamo Heights case back in 1986, where they said, no doubt, regression recoupment analysis is very important, but it's not the only measure that should be used to determine the necessity and the structure of that summer program provided by the district. And so what this Johnson case did for us, it really didn't say that this is a standard of FAPE. They stayed away from that. Instead, they said, here are some factors that the IEP should consider in making this determination of whether or not the child should or should not receive an extended school year program for the provision of FAPE, meaning, is this necessary for this child's individual unique needs and circumstances? And we've learned that through the Andrew case. But this case was so instrumental for the state of Oklahoma in that we now have this as our guide. So if there's ever a disagreement between the parent and the district about whether or not a child needs ESY, they should pull this 12 factor out. We have a ESY determination form that has these 12 factors. And if the IEP team does want the child to access an ESY, they will fill this out, or if there's a disagreement. But if the IEP team agrees the child does not need ESY services, they would not fill out the ESY determination because they've determined that the child doesn't need it in advance of this. But what's great about this court case, it gave us something to talk about, because the court at the 10th Circuit wanted us to look at more than the regression recoupment factor. So they said, first of all, you need to look at the degree of the impairment, because that's part of a huge factor of FAPE, and including least restrictive environment, is what is the nature and severity level of the child. So in order to determine the nature and severity level of a child, you have to have an evaluation data. And so data helps us make the determination, is this mild, is it moderate, or is this severe, or is it profound? And that allows us to see that component of the range, because our children with disabilities have such a range. And they also have such a range in specific skills. They may be advanced in one skill, but severe in another skill. So everything depends, and it's very unique to those children. Of course, the degree of regression suffered, and I'm going to talk about the actual predicted here in a second, so hold that thought. So it's looking at regression. It's also recovery time, as we discussed already, recouping from that regression, that backsliding of critical skills. It's also the ability of the child's parent to provide those educational structures in home. There was a court case back in 1980. It was out of Third Circuit. It was the parents' last name were Battle versus Pennsylvania. And the district won in that case, in that they were able to show that the parents had the ability to provide a lot of educational structures in the home that would prevent that regression recoupment component. The other factor that we need to look at is the child's rate of progress. So what is that rate of improvement on those child's individual goals and objectives? So the other thing that's part of these factors is it's not just academics, it's also looking at child's behavioral concerns and needs. And then it's also looking at physical problems, be it motor, fine and gross motor skills. It could be involving other skills such as adaptive. So we always want to look at academic, developmental, functional performance of children. And then we also, on number 8, it talks about what are the availability of alternative resources. There may be other ways that we can support a child during the summer without having them come to a school district resource program or ESY program. Number 9 talks about the ability of the child to interact with non-disabled children. Maybe that's the skill deficit, that they have social skills that are so severe that if they stay at home all summer long and don't interact with other children, that's going to significantly slide back all those great things that they have been working on during the school year. So we may want to create some type of social skill environment for the child during the summer in order that they won't slide back on that critical skill of social skills or self-regulation. And then number 10 talks about the areas of the child's curriculum which need continuous attention. So again, it's going back to FAPE. What are the provisions that the child will need in order to receive FAPE. So depending on those data components, the educational needs, it may be just math. It may not be any other academic things. It may just be math, or it may just be reading. Or it may even be like a related service. Maybe the child's making really good progress with all their academics, but maybe their articulation, if they don't receive that articulation therapy during the summer, they would have that severe regression and difficulty recouping that skill if not provided that support during the summer months. And then there was a court case back in 1984 regarding vocational needs. So it's not just about, the academic, developmental, and functional needs of the child, behavioral needs and physical needs, but also when they get into those secondary ages, maybe it's a vocational need that we need to work on during the summer months. And there's different kinds of programs that maybe the district could work on to help that kiddo get prepared for post-secondary activities. And then, of course, last one is just any other relevant factors that's determined by the IEP. That's what I liked about the Johnson case is that, there's already special factors on the IEP that are very specific in the federal law. But this court case kind of took that concept of saying, let's look at a variety of special factors that might help us determine whether or not this individual child, based on this critical skill, would need to have the support for the summer months or whenever ESY is determined to support them so that they don't lose that skill. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about in the Johnson case, there was a couple of things, and I didn't put this in the slide, but there was two factors that it was looking at. Not only the factors of what is the degree of regression and the suffering of recoupment time, which that's what the district was focusing on. They were focusing on, hey, mom and dad, you didn't bring the child during the summer months. We had an ESY program, but you didn't bring them during 82 to 86. And now suddenly you're wanting it, but we have no evidence of that. And so this court case was saying it's not just what is actual data, but it also should include predictive data, that if the child doesn't receive it, what's the prediction of this, depending on the circumstances of the child, what could happen if the child does not receive this ESY services during this time frame. And I kind of relate this back to children that have been receiving Sooner Start services through Part C. And let's say the child's birthday is like May 15th, and we have an IEP meeting in the district and determine the child's eligible for Part B. And yet school is about to shut down here. Like, let's say this is May 15th, I'm making this up of the child's third birthday, but school shuts down May 17th, and we don't start back up till August 15th. And even though we have not had the child as a school district, we could predict, because this child had already been being provided services in Part C as from birth, from 2 years, 11 months. And now we've determined they're eligible under Part B of IDA for school age, that we could predict that if this little one doesn't get these services during the summer months, that they may regress all those skills, those critical skills that they had, or not all, but maybe one or two or some. It all depends on the child. And we would want input from the Sooner Start staff, input from the parent to make a determination and go through those 12 factors to predict, based on previous information, to predict whether or not that child would need that prior to starting the school year. So those are things you can think about predictive data as an example. But the other thing I just want to briefly mention, this was an unusual case where the school district was a school district from Oklahoma, but they were kind of at the time, because you have to realize this is back in the late 80s, and this court case was actually determined finally in 1990. But during that time frame in the 80s, they were a smaller district, and so they actually would send children with significant cognitive disabilities to a co-op. It was the Tulsa County Co-op or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But that was one of the determinations, was who's going to take the obligation under FAPE. Is it the resident district who said, we don't really have a program to meet your school year needs, and so we're going to be sending you to a co-op, and the co-op actually serves the child? who takes, like if a parent files a state complaint or due process, is it the Tulsa County Co-op that is responsible and that would take the burden? Or is it the local school district? And the court determined it's the resident local school district that takes on the burden of a due process or state complaint or compliance or non-compliance is the district of resident. Even though the district is sending the child to receive FAPE at a co-op, it is the district's obligation to monitor and supervise those, be it the school year program or be it an ESY program. It is that resident district still responsible for making sure whoever they send this child to receive FAPE is doing it appropriately and within compliance. So that's just a side note. All right, and I want to emphasize again, not all students with disabilities will need ESY. A lot of, and going back to the degree of the impairment, so based on the data, is this a mild disability, a moderate disability, severe to profound disability? Just because I'm on an IEP, I will not automatically be entitled to receive ESY services. And there's several OSEP letters that have gone out from 1998 to 2003 that support that factor, that it is an IEP team determination, and you've got to look at these multiple factors. So for example, one parent back in the 90s wanted to say that it was because her child wasn't making progress with the goals and objectives of the IEP. And when they looked into her complaint, it was more about the fact that her child missed a lot of school. And once you start looking at why was this child missing school, it was a lot of unexcused absences. And so there's some truancy issues going on. So it was ruled that the child didn't need ESY because one, the district was offering to provide FAPE and the child wasn't coming, and there were some truancy issues that was causing the child to have lack of progress because they weren't exposed to the core curriculum and they weren't able to make progress in the general education curriculum, and they weren't able to make progress with their goals and objectives of the IEP. So you see there's multiple factors to discuss. So you need to look at all relevant factors in relationship to each of those 12 factors. And so again, the OSEP letter from Given in 2003 was don't look at a sole criterion. You have to look at multiple factors, and they always relate back to that Johnson case that you should be looking at minimum those 12 factors. And so we here in Oklahoma have that ESY determination documentation form that IEP teams will need to fill out if they're considering it, or if there's a disagreement between the LEA and the parent, in order to document how you came to this consideration. And again, it can be only one little area that you feel like is a critical skill that the child may not be able to sustain that over certain breaks. And ESY is determined on an annual basis. So just because a child doesn't get it one year doesn't mean they won't get it the next year, and vice versa. Just because they got it last year doesn't mean that they might get it the next year. Each year they make this determination based on the child's current present levels of functioning for academic, behavior, physical needs, functional performance, those adaptive skills, every little component that's on their IEP. So what else does IDA say about ESY? It talks about that the school district may not limit the extended school year services to a particular category of disability. So all children, no matter what their disability, even a child with a speech-only IEP, might be in need of ESY for the provision of FAPE. So it just depends. And so they can't, a school district may not say, well, only children with multiple disabilities are allowed to have ESY. That's not true. That goes against what IDA has to say. The second thing that the law says is they use the word unilaterally limit. That means the district makes the decision all by themselves, that we limit the number of days, the number of hours, the amount of time. As a district, we can't do that. Districts must be open to that individual IEP team decision. So ESY is going to be looking different for every individual child. So some children might get, only just as an OT service that might be one time a week for, a certain amount of time, like 20 to 30 minutes. Another child might get 2 times a week for certain therapy or service. Some children might come to an actual educational program 3 times a week for 2 hours. Some children might come 5 days a week for half days. Some children might come 5 days a week all day. So they should be unique and different because of all those 12 factors we've gone through. We have looked at the severity of the impairment of the child's disability. We looked at the remission recoupment. We looked at behavior. We looked at adaptive behavior. Adaptive behaviors wrapped in a lot of things. So adaptive behaviors are your daily living skills that are wrapped with a lot of things. For example, when we think of adaptive behavior in daily living, we're looking at toileting, let's say. I have to be able to communicate that I need to go to the bathroom. So that's a communication aspect. How do I learn that? Then once I'm in the bathroom, I need to have those fine motor skills of undressing and dressing back. So it's all those little things that are wrapped in many things that the child has to work on. And maybe those skills need to be worked on during those extended school year service. But another child on an IP would not need those adaptive skills. So that's why, as a district, you can't limit anything to a particular skill, a particular activity, or say that we only provide X. You can't do that. It's based on the unique needs of the children. So the first question the district will be asking is, well, how in the world are we going to be able to manage hiring staff when we have some kids coming 1 day a week, some kids just coming up for therapy, some coming 2 days a week, some coming 3, some coming 5, and they're coming at different times. So what we recommend at the state level is that every district have your local policy and procedures about ESY services and practices. So one of those would be have your IP teams make these determinations earlier. So like maybe in August, when you're developing those fall IPs, there's a drop down when you, and again, ESY must be looked at on an annual basis. There's an area about ESY, and you've got to change that day every single year to say that we looked at this. Either one, the drop down says ESY is not needed, it's not required for the provision of FAPE. ESY is required, so we know for sure this child needs it, or ESY is recommended, but the parent's declining it. Maybe the district offered it, but the parents said, you know what, we have something going on this next summer and we're going to decline it. That's great, but make sure the district documents that. Or maybe we're kind of not sure because maybe this is a new child to the district, or maybe the district and the parent are in disagreement, and we need more information that's more relevant. So we say we need to determine if ESY is required by a certain date. So this is, let's say we had the meeting September the 10th. We would mark number 4 to say, we're going to collect a bunch more information. We're going to collect some assessment data, and we're going to come back by, and this is where, as a school district, you might want to write a procedure. You might want to say by March 1st, we're going to meet back and make this determination. By doing that, with the majority of students already on an IP, already attending your district, no doubt you're going to have some new students that move into your district that you'll have to make these determinations after March 1st. But that'll give you a good idea, the majority of children, so that you'll have that data to look at how many children are coming so many days, how many kids are coming for so many hours, how many are coming for therapy, for speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, whatever services that the IP team has determined, and then turn around and start posting those positions to start hiring and creating those contractual agreements with, because your board has to, there's a huge process, parents, if you're listening, that they have to post those positions legally, interview. Once they interview, they have to recommend that to the board because it's the local board that actually does the official hiring of positions. And that's a process that takes time. So that's why the district is kind of concerned, oh my gosh, when there's so many different possible scenarios. And some districts are so small that they do want to co-op. And as a rural district, we might find a district willing to take on an ESY program. And all these smaller districts would provide some funding to support that co-op so that those needs are being met. But that's kind of an idea. Districts, if you're asking, how do I manage this financially and legally on hiring folks, that's one way to do it, is start earlier in those majority of your students making that determination at an earlier date. And then as those other new students move in, you'll have that to determine, do I need to add more staff or not based on the current staff I've hired. So what is the definition of ESY? Again, this goes back to section 300.106 in the federal regulation. It means special education related services. So it's everything within that IP that we can look at. And ESY is provided to children with disabilities only, and it's beyond the normal school year of the school district. It's in accordance with the student's IEP. And again, it's at no cost to the parents, and it must meet our standard within our state policies and procedures. Now, when it says beyond the normal school year, what does that mean? And so a lot of times when I am confused with the federal regulation, because sometimes law is really general and federal regulations are supposed to help us define the federal law, but sometimes even federal regulations can be a little confusing. So I go to the Federal Register, which is some Q&A kind of thing that goes on with a public comment period that the U.S. Federal Department of Education provides. And they did that the last time ID was amended was in 2004. So they provided this kind of Q&A. And one of them is, what does it mean on extended school year services? What does it mean beyond the normal school year? And they said, typically, ESY services are provided during the summer months. However, there's nothing in section 300.106 that would limit a public agency, again, that's another word for school district, from providing the ESY services to a child with a disability during times other than summer, such as before and after a regular school hour or day, or during the school vacations. If the IEP determines that the child requires ESY services during those time periods in order to receive FAPE. So they helped us see beyond what that means, beyond the normal school year. It's also beyond the normal school day. So what's the difference between just a regular summer school and ESY? So a regular summer school is open to all students, no matter if you have a disability or do not have a disability. And it's most summer schools are voluntary. We can't force you as a district to have you come. Now in high school, sometimes they're behind in credits and we would encourage you, but we can't force you. It's not mandated. We have Oklahoma statute that mandates children attend kindergarten through 12th grade unless the parents choose to homeschool or attend a private school. But we can't mandate because the state statutes don't mandate summer school, it's voluntary. But most of our elementary, middle school are very enrichment oriented type summer schools. So that's what a summer school is about. But if a student chooses to participate in just the regular summer school program, remember districts that the student's IP is still in play because we want to make sure our students with disability are participating fully in that summer school program. And so therefore, our specially designed instruction components are available with accommodations, modifications, and supplementary aids and supports so that our students can access that program to the best possible way because they do have a disability. But remember, not all students attend these summer schools. Now for ESY is not open for every child. It's only offered to children who have a disability identified under the Disability Act of IDEA. And it's only for those who, and then you've got that subgroup of IEP students. And then even within that IEP subgroup, only a few of those, the IEP team would determine that they needed it for the provision of FAPE. So that's kind of how that all fits together. So what does ESY look like for students with disabilities? The one thing I just want to reemphasize to families and to school district is it's not one size fits all. Please don't limit, again, that type of service, the programming, the amount of time, the duration of those services, how many days, weeks, those kinds of things. That's individually done based on the child's IEP for provision of FAPE. And we want to look at those critical skills. Even though the child may have a lot of educational needs on the IEP, there may be only one critical skill that we're worried about, and it meets that criteria in need of ESY services. So, and then the other thing is maybe the child will need transportation to and from where you're providing that ESY services in order to receive that. So if the family cannot bring that child there, then the district would be obligated to provide that transportation to and from, because as a team, IP team, we determined the child needed these ESY services for the provision of FAPE. So in order to receive that, we're going to have to provide that transportation so the child will receive the ESY for provision of FAPE. So again, depends on whether it's an academic need, could be a behavior need, could be a functional need, performance need, it could be a related service need. Again, it's individualized for a child, and some children, the the nature and severity of the impairment may be so severe that they need all of that. It is hard to determine without the IP team going through a lot of relevant information. The other thing I'd highly recommend to school districts is because the IP team has determined that this is necessary for these particular critical skills in order to provide FAPE, be it a specific skill or global educational needs, the LEA should use that current goal and objectives and go through which goal are we going to work on during ESY. We may work on all of them, or we may work on only a few of them, or maybe just one of the goals. So if we're working off these goals, we need a progress report after the ESY program is over with. So we are recommending to the LEA, you should provide a progress report documenting the student's performance during that ESY timeframe. And the great thing about that, that provides the data for that next year's ESY determination of need to say, look how great the progress the child made, looking at progress the child makes during the school year, during breaks of, Thanksgiving break and winter break, spring break, all the different holiday breaks. That allows us to see, including the data from the progress report of last year's ESY program or the before and after school program, whatever you've determined, have that data to sit down and talk about in order to help with those 12 factors. I think that's really important to have that great discussion. All right, that's basically the policies and procedures surrounding special education. So do we have any questions or concerns or anything that you have?
I don't have any questions in the chat or the Q&A, and you answered the questions that I had come up with, so thank you.
Welcome. All right, great.
I do just have one thought, and you know, um, I talked to a district a while back who they were a smaller district, and I'm just asking if you run into this quite a bit at the state level, is they're a smaller district and they were creating an ESY program, talking to surrounding districts, things like that. And the parent had some concerns that her child was going to be the only one serviced in ESY. So is that something that you've come across as where there's not a minimum number of students required to create an ESY program, correct?
Correct. That is correct. So that could be, because they are so small, they may have a small population of students on IPs. And so that may be the only child that the IEP team for the determined that needed that ESY. The only thing I would ask is, as long as we're looking at academic or therapies, but if we're looking at social skills, then that would be difficult to implement that social skill. So then it would become, how do we become creative to create an environment so the student could either one, get those skills taught to them and then have a way of generalizing that. So that may be a collaborative approach, because remember, one of the 12 factors is how would the parent provide that? And so we could talk about, hey, we could meet at a playground where your neighborhood park, or as a teacher, I could come out there and we could work together on how to get him or her to play with other children. It's that you get real creative on how you can do that social skill type program and resource.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. We appreciate the information.
You're welcome.
And we are going to move ahead and let Miss Norma Law and Miranda Hutchinson from DDSD go ahead and share their screen.
All righty. Well, hi, everybody. First, I just want to say a big thank you for having us here today. We love to talk about developmental disability services and all of the great services that we offer at DDS. So it's always a pleasure to get to come and talk about all the things that we have going on. So to start, we're going to just talk a little bit about the different types of services that we offer, talk about our eligibility guidelines, and then talk a little bit about our application process for our different services. But before I start through that, I always like to talk a little bit about our mission statement at DDS, because this really leads the way in how we develop our different services and support options at DDS. And that's simply that our mission is to help individuals with developmental disabilities and their families to help themselves to lead safer, healthier, more independent, and productive lives. At DDS, we have the 4 listed main service programs, and there's a lot of services that follow under some of those. Before I talk about these different programs, I want to first say that all of our services are need-based. And I also want to mention that we are the payer of last resort. And what that means is that if the service or support need you have can be met by another alternative resource like the Department of Rehabilitation Services, the Department of Ed, Sooner Care, whatever that might be, we will send you their way to get that service need met. But if it can't be met by that and you're eligible for our services, then we can meet that need as the payer of last resort. Okay. I'm going to talk about the respite voucher program first. And really, that is a respite voucher. And that is intended to help give a caregiver a break, right? So they can go to the store or go do something on a weekend or whatever that might be. To be eligible, both the caregiver and the care recipient have to live in the same home, and they cannot be receiving other different DDS state funded or waiver funded services. And that caregiver's adjusted gross income has to be less than $75,000 a year. The family support assistance payment is a cash payment of $250 that we can provide to eligible families. To be eligible, the child has to be under the age of 18, have an intellectual or a developmental disability, and that ranges widely. They must reside in their family home that is headed by a parent that's biological, adoptive, or a legal guardian, and they cannot be receiving any of our other DDS state or waiver funded services. And the child has to also reside in the state of Oklahoma, and the family income cannot exceed $45,000 a year. Now, we have a lot of our families that have younger children that choose to remain on our waiting list so that they can continue to receive this cash payment, because these families can use it to pay for things like rent or a mortgage or groceries or a bill or whatever that family needs to meet a service, and their child just might not be ready yet for waiver service or have that higher level of need. So we found this program to be very beneficial. Each family is eligible for $250 per month for the first child and $50 for each additional child that is eligible, up to $400 per month per household. Now I'm going to pause there and I'm going to let Norma talk about transition services while I try to fix my screen for you guys.
Thank you, Miranda. And Norma loves to speak about transitional services for our kiddos and our youth. Truly, with transitional services, we have partnered with Department of Ed and DRS to ensure that all individuals with disabilities get their pre-eds, their pre-ed employment transitional trainings. And we do that by Renee Sampson. She's so sick of me, I'm sure, all these emails. She's like, stop already. But she is such a trooper. Were you going to say something, Renee?
Sorry, I thought I had my camera on. I was going to say, no, you're not, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, her and I talk weekly at least. But and then we have secondary education, and I'm not sure that if you guys are aware that there are several educational programs across our state for secondary education to where our individuals can go to college. OU, OSU, NSU, and soon to be OCCC all have programs for secondary education, and they're on campus, y'all. So they are integrated into the community, which is amazing. So I'm going to drop my name and my email in the chat so that you guys can, if you guys have any questions at all, and I can help you.
Okay, thank you, Norma. All right. So I'm going to talk about our waivers. So we offer 4 waivers at DDS, and these are a combination of both state and federally funded waivers. So for the vast majority of children that enter our DDS services and receiving waiver supports are going to enter on our in-home support waiver for children, which is that smaller capitated waiver. And it's that second bullet there on the screen. And the reason for that is children typically can get their needs primarily met by other services available across the state. And so they don't necessarily need that higher level of paid support that that is needed. So, but for those children that do have that higher level of need, we do offer them the community waiver when that occurs. The children in our services are eligible for a variety of different services, the most popular of those being the Habilitation Training Specialist Service. So that is your paid staff support. And that's where you can have a paid staff support person that works directly with your loved one, and they can take them out for community outings, or they might take them to do any kind of community events, or they also might work within the home with the child to work on different skill building things like learning how to cook, medication administration, whatever that independent living need is, or whatever skills that child needs to work on, that HTS can do that. Another service we offer to kids is our architectural modifications and assessments. And so our architectural modifications are those things like ceiling lifts, grab bars, roll-in showers, those types of things. We also offer family training, which is kind of almost an additional service on top of like ABA therapy and psychological services that are normally offered through Sooner Care. So family training, you would work with a team to develop what we call a protective intervention protocol, which would help guide everybody how to interact with a child when they're having some increased behavioral needs. My favorite program listed here is enabling technology. And that is really just any type of technology that helps a person to gain or achieve independence. So that could be a high-tech items like smart home devices, software applications, automated medication dispensers, whatever that might be, to more lower tech items. But we offer a wide array of enabling technology for children that are on our waiver services. So before we leave, I'm going to drop some information about that into the chat. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you visit one of our 4 smart home demonstration sites that are located across the state. So you can come in and learn and have that immersive experience on how enabling technologies is helping people with all disabilities to lead more safer, more independent lives. So please, an educator, or as a parent or a professional provider, we really encourage you to visit those. And I will give you guys that information. We also offer respite in the waiver program and then self-directed services. And so now I'm going to turn this over to Norma and let her talk about self-directed.
Self-directed services is really, when it comes to kids, kind of my favorite because you mold the plan. You decide what's best for this individual, and you know your child best, right? And the most important thing is you get to hire the staff that is working with your individual, with your child. And so you know who they are. You're comfortable with them. It's not somebody that an agency just hired and you don't know who they are. So that makes it really nice. And you can think outside the box and get dance lessons or exercise at the Y, camps. Now, all these things do need like counselors recommendation slip or a doctor slip saying that these things are things that would help your individual, whether it be for social skills, maybe they need to exercise because they don't exercise enough. So anyway, this plan, self-directed services are just you mold the plan, which that's what makes it so special. This is also one of my favorites. And this is just, I think this year is when it came out, Miranda, or last year. Yeah.
Correct.
Your guardians or parents can be the HTS of children under the age of 18. Before, we couldn't do that. You could be the HTS of an adult child, but you could not be the HTS for the individual child in your home. And HTS just means you're working on skills with them, whether it's brushing their teeth or making a box of macaroni and cheese, making their bed, all those different kinds of things. So we were so excited when that went through, so the parents could participate in that and do that for their child. So we couldn't wait to share that with everybody.
Yeah, we started offering that a year ago in February of 2025.
Okay, I thought it was just a year.
Yeah. So to round out our talk about our waiver programs, I know your next big question is who is eligible to participate in our waivers? So to be eligible for a waiver program, you have to be a resident of Oklahoma and be at least 3 years old. And the child has to be diagnosed with an intellectual disability and meet Sooner Care financial eligibility guidelines. And that also includes the child needs to have an unmet need that we can meet with our services. Now, to apply for any of our services, we have one application for all. So whether you want to apply for respite vouchers or the family support assistance payment or for our waiver programs, it's all one application. And I have some information there on where to send those applications. I suggest you just contact Liberty. They're our front door. Contact them and say, look, I'm interested in applying for services. Give them a call and they'll help you through the application process. That's just the easiest way to do it. And then if you're currently on our waiting list for services, and you've changed, like you've moved, your phone number has changed, your email's changed, any of your contact information has changed, please let us know that by calling the phone number provided here or clicking that link and reporting the change there. Whether you think you did it or you're not sure you did it or you need to do it, let us know. So when your name comes up on that waiting list, we're aware and we can find you to make sure that we're getting your loved one into services. And that is it. Any questions for us? And I'm going to drop that information in the chat.
Thank you, ladies, for all of that information. That was really good. I do not have any questions in the Q&A or the chat, but I have questions since hearing this, if this is okay.
Yeah.
How long is your waiting list? Do you guys have like an approximate time frame for families?
It's about a year to year and a half right now.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. And this is solely my ignorance, so I'm sorry if it's a stupid question. But like your respite voucher, can families apply for these programs, use them as they need them, and if like life gets hectic or they need to stop, can they apply again later? Or is it like a one time, like a one and done kind of thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like if you're participating in a program and you're like, I don't need these respite vouchers anymore, or my income has gone above the amount allowed for that specific for family support assistance payment, and I no longer can receive it because I make too much money. But later on, I'm back below that 48,000. Yes, you can reapply and ask for those services to be reinstated for you. Just because you had to like it didn't work out or your circumstances changed and now you need that service again, that you can still reapply again and we will help connect you with that.
Okay. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you, ladies, so very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, we are now going to transition to Renee with DRS. And Renee, you can go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
All right, let me put this on beginning there. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Renee Sansom Briscoe, and I am the transition coordinator for the Department of Rehabilitation Services. And I'm going to talk mostly about our summer activities and resources for high school, but I also want to talk about some things beyond high school. So I just also wanted to bring up the fact that when we're talking about our summer programs and we're talking about DRS as a whole, I want to be sure that we know that we are building a culture of possibility. We want to talk about their strengths. We want to have flexible approaches when we talk about our summer programs with students working. We want to include accessible environments and have inclusive practices. We want to be problem solvers and we want to help find solutions. We have a million and one collaborative partnerships, and we love having organizations that are available to help us. Celebrating growth and progress, we want to be sure that we're recognizing those and learning through experience. Our work-based learning programs are where we get that, and that's super phenomenal programs. Innovation and experimentation, and of course, leadership model. We want to be leading the way for our youth and showing them the possibilities that are endless. So promoting independence, inclusion, and community participation. So most of all, I just wanted to highlight those things because those things kind of get missed out. We just skip over to what we're doing, but we don't talk about, what we're trying to do professionally to help build confidence in these students. So now let's talk about services. So what can DRS provide to students with disabilities, including summer programming? So DRS is comprised of many different aspects. So we have a deaf and hard of hearing unit. We have services for the blind and visually impaired. We have vocational rehabilitation. We have business enterprise services. We have the deaf and hard of hearing unit. We have oh gosh, determination division. We have so many different programs, but I am specifically in charge of the transition age youth, which is in our state 15 and a half to 21 for DRS purposes. But for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, it's from 14 to right before their 22nd birthday. So we are tasked with, there's a mandate that we spend 15, that's 15% of our total budget on transition age youth. That's a lot of money, and that's great that we have that to spend. But it's like putting a square in a circle, and so we have a lot of different guidelines. So it's not as easy as just saying, "Hey, we'd love to do this. Let's do it." It's always, we got to figure out all the things that we can do and follow the guidelines. So with all the guidelines met, these are what we currently have in place. Obviously, when in high school, that's our counselors are doing counseling and guidance. That's their number one job. But they can also provide vocational assessments to students with disabilities. We can provide pre-employment transition services, and I'm going to go through these individually here in a second. In our summer programs, we have a lot of summer program opportunities. Our Tech Now program, along with STEM Camp, which is also a summer program. And then we have variations of work experiences like school work study, work site learning, employer work study, on-the-job training. We also provide work adjustment training. We have project search sites, and we have a new semi-new training program called OSU IDD self-determination training. And it's really blossomed and is becoming something really cool. So I also want you to know that at DRS, you can apply for services at 15 and a half. You can apply for services at 15 and a half. You may not be able to receive a service until you're 16, but you can still apply, okay? I hear all the time, I'm not old enough, can't do it. You have to be 16. You can apply at 15 and a half. I have the link in this PowerPoint to go to our website application link. You can also do a self referral on our website. It goes to a portal, and that person sends out the information to a counselor so they can follow up with you. Let's talk about pre-employment transition services, which is PREETS. The National Center for Disability Education and Training, University Oklahoma Outreach, it's a lot of words there, Central Technology Center, and Kiamichi Technology Center, through a contract with DRS, they are making PREETS available to high school students with disabilities. So the activities are intended to help students get an early identification on their career interest so they can achieve a community integration once they graduate high school, whether that be standard or alternate diplomas. Pre-ETs can be provided to students with disabilities who have been determined eligible for DRS services. So they could have a case, or they could be potentially eligible, which means they have to have a documented disability. They have to be between the age of 14 and 21, and they have to be enrolled in a recognized educational program. So over the last, since 2019, quite a bit ago, we have reached over 35,000 students that we have served. That's a lot of students that we've served, and we've given opportunities for some, real world experiences, whether that be include the work-based learning, whether it be talking to them about self-advocacy, whether it be talking about workplace readiness, job development, resume writing, job exploration counseling, and then talking about post-secondary options. We have 41 pre-ET specialists that are working in the schools, with the schools statewide. We do have virtual options, so really there's no limits on locations unless we have to be there in person, and then we only have 42 right now. We're ever expanding, and we would love to be in all 77 counties, but that's money, and we have 15%, which is a lot, but I would say it costs more than that to do all 77 counties, but we're still thriving and doing well. And we're in 250 schools around there. We also have some opportunities with Not Your Average Joe, Safe Haven, Bridges, and Tulsa and Down Syndrome Association to provide some work-based learning opportunities and self-advocacy. There's a peer mentoring program through the University of Oklahoma, through the NCDET, and it's for our high school students. The mentees are 16 to 21, and the mentors are 18 to 26. And those mentors are getting paid $12 an hour to mentor these high school students. So it's a really cool opportunity for our students. And what we're seeing is that our mentees who are now mentors, and they're mentoring other students as they come up with disabilities. So very, very cool to watch that progression. Our summer experiences, we have a lot of options. We have Building Employment Skills for Today, which we call BEST, and we have Summer Transition Employment Program, which we call STEP, and together that makes the BEST STEP. And again, I will go into this here in just a second. We have our Visually Impaired and Blindness Empowerment Program. We also have OU Sooner Works Summer Camp, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Camp, STEM Camp. And then a new one that's taking place this summer, which I'm excited about, is called Thrive, fueled by UCO Edmond. So in our BEST program, it is a 1-week summer camp opportunity for those students 16 to 21 who want to go to work, who are looking to explore work opportunities. We go into a classroom setting for a week, and we talk about job search activities. We talk about work readiness, how to dress, what not to dress, what not to wear. Sometimes we have little contests on who dresses the best that day, and just trying to make it interactive and fun. And this gives them access to employment and vocational opportunities, making social connections. I have 2 with autism, and that is one of the most important pieces. Obviously, working is good, but you can't hold down a job without making those social networking connections and knowing how to be social. And then, of course, we're just teaching them those pre-employment transition skills. We do have some guest speakers that come every once in a while. It's comprised of a lot of different partners involved. And once they get done with their BEST program, they jump into STEP, which is the Summer Transition Employment Program. So once they're done with BEST and they've completed it, they're now eligible to go on to the STEP program. And this program, they will gain summer work experience and improve employment readiness among, the transition age youth, students with disabilities. They have the ability to work up to 25 hours of part-time work with some fated assistance from OU. OU hires temporary employees, and they're considered work skills trainers, job coaches, if you will. And then they're not there all the time one-on-one, but they do kind of jump in and call, if they need to be there, they can show up. They just kind of check in and make sure the students are doing well. We have 20 students, the maximum of 20 students per camp. So when you have a 5-to-1 ratio for student to job coach, we have 4 job coaches or work skills trainers at each site. We try to match the job according to what that interest is of the student. That's not always feasible because like in Roland, Oklahoma, there wasn't many options available. But if you're willing to drive, you can, go to the next city or something. So, but we do try to get them to match their job that they are looking for. You must be 16 years old. You can be potentially eligible, or you can have a DRS case to participate in this. And returning to high school after your junior year, or it's not in here, but we did make a change this year that if you've graduated and you coming back, I mean, if you've graduated and you want to go to Best Step, you can join, you can do that. It's free. It costs nothing to anyone, no matter what basic living guidelines are. There's a link to the application. It closes March 2nd, and we will not be accepting any late applications this year because we've had 647, I think was the number today, of students applied. So we got our hands full. We're going to be doing interviews with parents and students to make sure that they're the right fit for the program. And they get paid $10 an hour. So very, very cool opportunity for our students. And then our visually impaired and blindness empowerment program, VIBE, it is just like our best part of the Best Step. It's just like that. They're in the setting in the classroom, except they're at the School for the Blind. And of course, they're learning a little bit different things. They're also adding in their travel transportation. How do you get on a bus? How do you know that you're carrying a 5 or a 1 or a 10? And I mean, just all those things that visually impaired and blind students have to think about. And then we've added the component of STEP to this also. So when they complete VIBE, if they want to, they can go to the community and work for those 4 weeks. Our summer work and study academy at OU Sooner Works is an opportunity for students with IDD to come and experience living on campus for a week. Students, they develop career exploration skills, self-determination skills. We talk about college readiness. It's mostly for those students who want to go to those like OU Sooner Works or Opportunity Orange or Riverhawks at NSU, trying to get them involved so that they understand what it's going to be like. Talking about independent living and workplace behavior. I think applications should open up pretty soon for this opportunity. It is sponsored by DRS, and you do not have to be a DRS client. You can be potentially eligible. It is free for Oklahoma residents, but there is a fee for anyone coming outside of Oklahoma. But they do accept them. In fact, we've had 2 from Texas last year. Really cool that they wanted to come. Our Tech Now program is actually in the school year round. But we take a piece of that and we do a 3-day camp free to participants and do a STEM camp just in that amount of time. So whatever they do in the whole school year, they're building computer skills and working on teamwork skills, and they're creating projects and racing cars made out of paper and making bracelets and necklaces and you name it, they're doing it. So we take the best of all of that and we combine it in 3 days, and they get to make all kinds of stuff those 3 days, and then they go home with, we've made t-shirts and socks and mouse pads and buttons and hats and all the things. And so it's really cool. Currently, they're going to be in 6 locations. I need to add for Best Step, we have 32 or 34 locations scheduled for Best Step around the state. So we really are trying to reach a large area of students. So STEM camp, we have 6 currently going on that will be going on in the summer. They're all throughout the summer. So with all of the camps that DRS is sponsoring from June to August 9th, we will have 44 camps available. So there's quite a bit of opportunities, and I love that. So Our Thrive, I don't know the dates yet. It's going to come out this summer. We're actually have conversations in a few weeks. This program is a 1 week immersive college preview experience, kind of like the OU one will be. They're going to have a little bit of difference, but it's going to merge expectations by offering transformative, student-centered programming for learners whose needs are rarely addressed by a conventional summer camp. So very, very cool opportunity. Back to in the schools and in the summertime, if the contract's signed, the school can do schoolwork study for a student where the school is paying the student $7.25 an hour, and then the student, I mean, this DRS is reimbursing the school for those wages. And that can happen all year during the school year. And then if the school needs to or wants to do that in the summertime, they are more than welcome to sign that contract also for the summer. Our work adjustment training contract is not necessarily in the summer, but it is an opportunity for students with lower functioning students to be able to go into the community and learn work habits and just social adjustment skills. They have a job coach with them. You may have seen them maybe at Denny's or Kohl's. They have different jobs there, and they go and do that for 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon, and then they go back to the school and they do classroom work. And Project Search is only a 9-month program, but it is an amazing program where it's unpaid internship, which turns off a lot of people, but they're getting 9 months of free training because DRS pays for it. And they're nine times out of 10, those students are hired somewhere, maybe not in where they're doing their rotations, but somewhere they're going to get hired before they are done with their Project Search internship. So every year we do have at least one from every site that hires one student. They just love them and they fall in love and they just hire them, right? So they know immediately that we want this person. And they have to go through the process. They have to apply, they have to interview, they have to submit their resume, they have to do all these things like anyone else would at a hospital or a hotel. There has to be DRS, there has to be a school, there has to be a host business, and there has to be a provider. Those must be in place in order for it to be Project Search. This is a national model that we are replicating. It is intended for those who have significant to most significant disabilities. They go and do 3 rotations of 10 weeks in each host business. Mostly ours are in hotels and hospitals here, yes. We have 10 sites currently. We have 5 young adult programs through some career techs, and then we have 4 high school programs. So anyone can do it, right? There is fees though, and that startup fee is hard, but we do have some opportunities to be able to explore and help with some of those costs. And then our determination training is for 18 to 21-year-olds with IDD. And they are just, like I mentioned earlier, they're talking about self-awareness and self-determination. They have opportunities where they meet in person and then they go through a series of lessons for individuals receiving home and community-based waivers through DDS. Training expenses can be added to the individual plan of care. Groups meet at OSU campus twice a week for an hour. And then it's been really cool to see the relationships and community involvement that have formed over the last, I think this is the 3rd year to do it. And then we talk about after high school, like once you graduate, what do we do now? There's all these summer programs. So they graduate and they may get an adult caseload, right? Because they're not in transition services anymore, but that's not where DRS stops. We can provide vocational guidance and counseling. We can provide those vocational assessments again. There's opportunity for job coaching, supported employment, job placement, training, assistive technology, psychological evaluations, on-the-job training. We are able to support those inclusive post-secondary education programs. There's a program called CERT Culinary in Tulsa and a program at OU that's called OU Spark 360. The young adult programs that we assist are all the ones in the state. Riverhawks program at NSU, Sooner Works program at OU, Opportunity Orange at OSU, and then Neil Neil Went Center for Neurodiversity is at USAO, and it is a degree seeking opportunity. So those others are not degree seeking, but they do hold a 4-year post-secondary certificate program or 2-year. They focus on academics, independent living, socialization, career development, career readiness. We offer DRS pays for internships, work experiences while they're actually going to school. They can work up to 6 to 15 hours a week, 10 weeks in each fall semester and 10 weeks in each spring semester. And then DRS can assist, if eligible, based on, basic living guidelines, up to $5,000 per semester. Really excited about this opportunity for our students. A lot of states aren't doing this yet, and so we're actually on top of it with this piece. And Neil Went only asked for $1,750, and so that's what we're paying right now, but in the future it could go up. We don't know what that looks like. There's also a CERT culinary competitive employability readiness training where they're learning culinary arts, and it's for 18 to 24-year-old students. They have to have a diagnosed disability. They have to be a DRS client for this program, and they have to have the ability to independently work. But they are learning culinary arts, and we've had several that have been hired straight into hotels and becoming chefs. So super exciting for that. And Tulsa Tech also has a Project Search site as well. And then our Spark 360 is an autism support program that's under the Zorro Institute at OU. And it is for students with autism seeking an undergraduate degree as they're navigating the hidden college curriculum. I mean, I graduated from East Central and Ada, and it was overwhelming. So I can't imagine going to OU, not knowing all these things and just, kind of just floundering out there by yourself. So this is an opportunity for somebody to actually be there to support and help them participate through their academic planning and transition supports and employment skills, and because they do work while they're on campus there, especially through the IPSY program. So this is just a really cool opportunity that we have with OU, and that says fall 2025, but clearly it means fall 2026. The deadline is September 1st. So DRS client, you have to be a client for this service, and it is available. The different levels of what we pay are different every semester. It just depends on what they're doing that semester. So I ran through that because I know that, I don't have so much time, but those are like the programs that are for our youth and young adults. I could go on for days about what DRS can actually provide to all people, but just talking about programming, that's what that looks like. So, and here's my information, but I'm going to stop sharing, and then if anyone has questions.
All right. Thank you so much for all of that information. That was good. That was so interesting. I do not see any questions in the chat or the Q&A. And I don't believe I have any questions either. That was awesome. So, well, I guess I do have a question, and really just for myself. Like if we talk to our clients and I, see that they have a need for DRS, is it okay to refer them straight to you, or is there
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. I
Awesome.
usually say I can be the point of contact because it's nice to have just one person and not 20 people. And you're like, well, you're not in this area. It's just easier for me to send it out. And we also have a Google link that has like all of the schools in the state and what county they're in, and then who the counselor is. We try to keep it updated monthly so that if you ever needed anything, you could just let me know for sure.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I want to give another big thank you to all of our presenters today. We appreciate your time so much and your information and the things that you do for the students in Oklahoma.